A ceasefire is agreed in the Black Sea and on attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure. Moscow's confirmed the news. This is the major development to come from the talks in Saudi Arabia. Those talks involve Russian and American representatives who met in Riyadh. Ukraine wasn't present, but President Volodymyr Zelensky says that the US deal with Russia represents the right steps. He says he will ask Donald Trump for weapons and new sanctions on Russia if Moscow breaks the ceasefire. On the ground in Ukraine this Tuesday, Russian missile strikes on the Kherson region. Zelensky added he hopes the US will realize at the end of the day Russian narratives about Ukraine are false. The statements made by Trump's chief envoy Steve Witkoff are all in line, he says, with Kremlin claims. An issue that disappointed Ukraine's president, Zelensky is critical of the US decision to restore Russian agricultural and fertilizer exports. Well, Volodymyr Zelensky spoke a little earlier.
We believe that this is a weakening of the position and a weakening of the sanctions. We do not yet know the details, and we were not present at the meeting, so I can't say anything. But this was not on our agenda. The American side raised it, Umarov contacted me, and I said that this is not a discussion about an unconditional ceasefire, or even a partial ceasefire in the sky and at sea.
So, a deal announced, but there are many other issues to resolve. Let's get some analysis to bring in Peter Zalmayev from the Eurasia Democracy Initiative. Peter joins us live from Kyiv. Peter, a very good evening to you. It's always a pleasure to have you on France 24. Do you think we are on the brink of what you've been waiting for, peace in Ukraine?
I'd like to think along those lines, but I share the skepticism of our president. We are seeing clear tactics of the Kremlin to drag out the time, to pretend to go along with Donald Trump's wishes and to continue bombarding and pulverizing Ukrainian cities and dragging out the time in order to blame Ukraine for the violations or whatever ceasefire is reached, etc. Vladimir Putin does not feel like this would be a good time to stop the war. I mean, he is on a slow but still on the offensive. They're grabbing more and more Ukrainian territory. They were able to dislodge the Ukrainian troops in the Russian area of Kursk, depriving Ukraine of that bargaining chip, etc. So I think Vladimir Putin is feeling very confident he can continue playing Donald Trump for a fool, buttering up his ego by presenting, portraits of Donald Trump to his envoy and telling him that he prayed for Donald Trump's survival after the assassination attempt, etc. So he's feeling pretty confident he can continue to run circles around the American president. So the big question is when and whether Donald Trump's patience with that will run out, or if we're talking about some kind of an agreement, a secret kind of protocol between the Russian and the American side to essentially offer Ukraine a ceasefire or a deal that would be tantamount to capitulation. And Russia so far is getting everything it wants and nothing really that would be too hurtful to it as far as concession goes.
I can understand and I can hear your skepticism about what's been decided, Peter, and we're still waiting for more details to emerge, of course. But Volodymyr Zelensky immediately saying that if Russia doesn't respect this, he will seek from Trump weapons and more sanctions on Russia. It's one thing asking for that. I suppose the big question would be, would Trump do it?
Well, Donald Trump has sent us decidedly, if you will, mixed messages. If you remember during the election campaign, he said that he would put two sides together, and if, let's say, Russia refused to go along, he would give Ukraine as much or as many weapons, if not more, than Biden never did. And now he's saying that, the only way to stop the war is to stop arming Ukraine. If he withdraws assistance, military assistance to Ukraine after that meeting with Zelensky in the Oval Office, then he restores it. So this really is impossible to really predict what Donald Trump is going to say or to do next. But his envoy's recent, interview to Tucker Carlson, I'm talking about Mr. Witkoff, was very disconcerting to me, because Mr. Witkoff essentially repeated word for word Russia's propaganda about the legitimacy of these so-called referenda in the 4 regions, which were roundly condemned as illegitimate, as unfair and untransparent, obviously. He repeated the Kremlin's lies about many things. It was, at one point I was wondering whether he was the envoy of Trump or the envoy of Vladimir Putin. So, and he's a confidant of Donald Trump for many years, we understand. So if that is anything to go by, then it just shows you where Donald Trump, where his sympathies lie. And unfortunately, they don't seem to lie with Ukraine.
One wonders what the possible negotiation tactic might be coming from Trump's side of these things. There's been talk about the nuclear power plant. Zaporizhia remains under Russian occupation as you and I are speaking now. Clearly, Volodymyr Zelensky is saying that none of that is on the table for negotiation. It should come back to Ukraine. However, Russia doesn't want to give up that Zaporizhia power plant. Again, another issue, and no sign on the horizon of an answer, of a solution to that.
Well, I mean, that particular issue tells me that there's a lot of improvisation on the American side, a lot of things that are half-baked that are being proposed. And if Donald Trump were a bit more careful, if his acolytes did a little bit of a homework, they would know that according to the Russian constitution, these areas that have been captured and more up to the administrative borders of Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Luhansk, they are already part of Russia according to the constitution. So I just can't see how Putin would ad hoc or in any other format relinquish that strategic object, that strategic power plant, and that strategic land that belongs to Russia according to their own constitution. So Donald Trump is setting himself a sort of trap by kind of making a big announcement about this and without really putting some thought into what it would entail. Like you said in your question, I just can't see of any motivation Vladimir Putin would have to give up that piece of infrastructure. How would he explain it to his generals? I mean, whether he bothers explaining anything to his population, that's another question. But there are still people around him in his immediate circle, and those war correspondents, folks that are constantly writing and commenting on Telegram channels, who are very, or would be extremely unhappy about that sort of deal.
And the fact that the US, Trump, is going to help reopen Russian agriculture, farming exports, farming produce, fertilizer, that sort of thing. Zelensky not happy about that. I take it you agree with Zelensky. This is a sign that America's giving more to Russia than it would to Ukraine.
Precisely. And if Russia is already getting some sanctions lifted, at least there's talk of that. And these limited ceasefires, first we were talking about the ceasefire that would put an end for 30 days on strikes on civilian infrastructure. Well, that does not prevent Putin from bombarding and pulverizing our towns and cities every day, just like you mentioned. Kherson, 2 days ago it was Kiev, a few days before it was Odessa. All of a sudden, no one is talking about it in the Trump administration, as if that is okay. And then if you're talking about a ceasefire on any sort of warfare in the Black Sea, well, that also works in Russia's favor, because in this asymmetrical warfare that we have seen over the last 3 years in the Black Sea, it is Ukraine that's been on the up. It's Ukraine that's been able to dislodge and neutralize and destroy Russian frigates and Russian warships, etc. So once again, we're seeing another sort of feather in Putin's cap when we're talking about these negotiations. So far, the tally is decidedly, unfortunately, in Russia's favor.
Peter Zalmayev, thank you for joining us. Please stay safe, sir. Peter Zalmayev from the Eurasia Democracy Initiative joining us from Kyiv. Always a pleasure, sir. Do look after yourself and your family. We will have more, of course, as it develops. Thank you to Peter Zalmayev from the Eurasia Democracy Initiative for giving us that analysis of the situation. We, of course, will have more